On Valentine's Day night, I waited for Caspian for 3 hours, staying until 3 in the morning, but he never arrived. By chance, I discovered he had spent the evening with his first love, proposing to her. They had made a pact. If both were still single after 6 years, they would reunite. Realizing the extent of his deception, I saw through his promises of a special date. Smiling outwardly, I agreed, but in my heart, I decided to move on and accept the advances of my childhood friend. That night at a French restaurant, I waited for Caspian for hours, calling and texting him repeatedly without any response. As my frustration grew, I tried to distract myself by scrolling through videos on my phone. By coincidence, I stumbled upon a live stream showing a man in a black suit kneeling in a heart-shaped arrangement of roses, proposing to a beautiful woman in a white dress. The woman, overcome with joy, accepted the ring amid applause from the crowd. Although I couldn't see the man's face, his figure seemed familiar, eerily resembling Caspian. Just as I tried to confirm my suspicion, the live stream ended abruptly. The uncertainty gnawed at me, but I kept my doubts to myself. By 3 a.m., Caspian still hadn't returned. Ignoring my texts and calls, he had completely abandoned our plans for the night. Surrounded by happy couples, I was consumed with anger and left the restaurant alone. The next day, around noon, Caspian finally came home, apologizing profusely as he hugged me tightly. He claimed he had been stuck working overtime at the hospital. Struggling against his embrace, I let my anger show. But he persisted, handing me a gift box and explaining it was a special New Year's gift. His pale face and tired voice softened my resolve, especially when he placed a platinum necklace around my neck, telling me how beautiful it looked on me. Reluctantly, I forgave him, but warned that another incident like this would end our relationship. Caspian promised it wouldn't happen again, and life seemed to return to normal. Later, curiosity got the better of me. I searched for the necklace online and was shocked to learn it wasn't sold individually, but was part of a set accompanying a pair of diamond rings worth a fortune. This revelation reminded me of the live stream I had seen, and unease crept in. Determined to uncover the truth, I searched Caspian's belongings, but found nothing suspicious. Checking his phone proved equally fruitless. It was unnervingly clean. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, my gut told me something was wrong. When Caspian left for work later that day, I decided to follow him. He drove to a hotel where a stunningly elegant woman emerged, none other than the woman from the live stream. Caspian greeted her warmly, and they shared a kiss in broad daylight. A glint on his finger caught my eye. It was a diamond ring. Realizing he had hidden it in his car, I felt my suspicions confirmed. Watching them enter a French restaurant hand in hand was a devastating blow. On what should have been our anniversary, Caspian had betrayed me. 5 years of love felt like a cruel joke. Back at home, I wept bitterly. Questions flooded my mind. When had he started seeing her? How long had this been going on? My search for answers led me to her social media account, where their engagement videos had gone viral. The captions revealed everything. Caspian and his first love had rekindled their romance, fulfilling their long-standing agreement. Enraged and heartbroken, I decided to end things for good. I messaged Caspian, suggesting a final date at the French restaurant and warning him not to stand me up. After sending the message, I began packing my belongings, discarding what I didn't need, including the necklace, which I tossed in the trash. That same night, I left for my parents' house. Caspian responded, agreeing to the date, but I ignored him, imagining his confusion when he arrived at an empty table. The next day, I distracted myself at a bar with friends, drinking heavily to numb the pain. My night ended in a blur, with vague memories of being carried home and my mother chastising me for my behavior. The following morning, I woke to a flood of messages and calls from Caspian. His final message, sent at 4 in the morning, asked why I hadn't shown up and where all my belongings had gone. Coldly, I sent him screenshots from the live stream and a barrage of curses before blocking him entirely. Though I felt a sense of relief, the sadness lingered. I spent days at home, slowly processing the breakup. One afternoon, a knock at my window broke the silence. A familiar voice called out, "Serafina, come out and play!" It was Finn, my childhood friend. Growing up with me, Finn's familiar voice came from outside the window. When I opened it, his face greeted me with a smile. "You've been back for so long. Why haven't you gone out?" he asked. I replied weakly, "I don't feel like going out." He stepped closer, his gaze fixed on me, and asked with concern, "What's wrong?" My eyes were still swollen from crying, and I knew he could tell. I tried to brush it off. It's nothing, just a breakup, I said, pretending to sound indifferent. Finn's smile turned mischievous as he remarked, breaking up just means you're free to meet someone new. Yeah, I know, I muttered, trying to end the conversation as I moved to lie down. But his voice stopped me. So, what do you think of me? He asked, catching me off guard. Staring at him in disbelief, I snapped, Are you joking? He stood up straight, his expression serious. I'm not joking, I mean it. Have you ever thought about me? I was taken aback and stammered, but I just broke up. Doesn't that bother you? He shook his head, smiling. I don't mind. I've liked you for years. I was speechless, unsure how to respond. Silence filled the air. I didn't agree to his confession. I didn't have the energy to begin a new relationship. But Finn didn't give up. Every day he visited me, sometimes bringing flowers, other times pastries we used to enjoy as kids. Occasionally, he brought his family's puppy to cheer me up. Little by little, his persistence chipped away at my defenses. One day he asked again, Serafina, would you like to take a walk with me? This time, I didn't refuse. I nodded and his smile brightened with pure joy. We strolled through the park and Finn gently took my hand. I didn't resist. Suddenly, a furious, familiar voice interrupted the moment. Turning around, I saw Caspian standing a short distance away. I hadn't expected him to find my house. He stormed over, anger flashing in his eyes, raising his fist as though to strike Finn. I quickly stepped in front of Finn and demanded, What are you trying to do? Caspian clenched his teeth. Well, what do you think I want to do? I want to deal with this scoundrel. Seeing him made me furious, and I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. Caspian, how dare you? I retorted. If I hadn't discovered the truth, I would have unknowingly become the other woman in someone else's marriage. He faltered, stammering, You have to let me explain. I rolled my eyes and snapped, Explain what? Get out of my sight. I don't want to see you again. Caspian, shaking with anger, pointed at Finn. If I have to leave, he has to go too. I tightened my grip on Finn's hand and replied coldly, Let's be clear. He's my boyfriend now. You're the one who needs to leave. Caspian yelled, I never agreed to break up. I smirked sarcastically. You're planning a wedding, yet you claim we're not broken up? Do you want it all? His silence spoke volumes. I fixed him with a cold stare. Don't ever show your face to me again. You make me sick. Lowering his head, he mumbled, I know I was wrong. I didn't plan to marry her. Since you left, I realized I can't live without you. My feelings for her were out of greed, not love. He looked up, his eyes pleading. Serafina, I shouldn't have hurt you. Can we start over? Absolutely not, I retorted firmly. You don't deserve another chance. Caspian stood there, speechless. I grabbed Finn's hand, ready to leave, but Caspian stepped in our way, refusing to move. His gaze lingered on our joined hands as if trying to pierce through the bond we shared. Finn, visibly irritated, released my hand and prepared to confront him. Alarmed, I quickly intervened, shoving Caspian hard. Get out of the way! Good dogs don't block the path! Caspian's face turned red with anger. I'm telling you again, I didn't agree to break up. I scoffed. Who cares? Your agreement is meaningless. Pulling Finn away, I left. This time, Caspian didn't follow. He stood there, defeated, but I didn't look back. The next day, he showed up at my house with gifts. Grabbing a broom, I prepared to chase him away. My mom, unaware of the situation, stopped me. What's going on? Why are you acting like this? She asked. Mom, he's a liar, I exclaimed. Before I could explain further, Caspian interrupted, dropping to his knees. Auntie, I made a mistake and hurt Serafina. I'm here to apologize and beg for forgiveness. He bowed 3 times. My mom, confused, asked, What did you do? Get up and explain. Caspian refused to rise. If Serafina won't forgive me, I won't leave, he declared. I laughed bitterly and pulled my mom into the kitchen, explaining everything. Furious, she stormed back out, broom in hand, shouting, Get out! We don't welcome you here. Caspian tried to speak, but my mom swung the broom, forcing him to dodge. Auntie, I truly regret my actions. Please, give me another chance, he pleaded. Ignoring him, she swung again, this time aiming for his face. Humiliated, Caspian had no choice but to leave. My mom tossed his gifts outside and locked the door. Peeking over the wall, I saw him kneeling by the door, which only made me angrier. The commotion drew the neighbors' attention. Curious onlookers gathered, some even pleading on Caspian's behalf. "He seems genuinely sorry," they said. "Why not give him a second chance? It's freezing out here." But I ignored their pleas and called the police. When the officers arrived, Caspian, seeing no other option, reluctantly got up. Before being taken away, he glanced back at me, his eyes filled with regret. By the time Finn arrived, everything was over. He looked at me seriously and said, "Next time, don't let it get this far." I must call him right away. I nodded to show I understood. As soon as Finn left, my mom grabbed me and began questioning me. Under her persistent inquiries, I could no longer hide my relationship with Finn and had to admit everything. After listening, my mom nodded in approval and said, "Finn is a good guy. You're not getting any younger, so why not get engaged first and then consider marriage?" I was surprised at first, but quickly realized it wasn't a bad idea. After all, I was ready to marry Finn. After some discussion, he agreed to the engagement without hesitation. Since it was just a simple event, we arranged a modest banquet with a few tables, keeping things straightforward. On the day of the engagement, we wore bright red outfits and celebrated with toasts amidst the blessings of family and friends. Just as the festivities were in full swing, the courtyard gate was suddenly thrown open. Caspian stormed in, his bloodshot eyes wild as he recklessly knocked over anything in his path, heading straight for us. Acting erratically, he seemed intent on ruining everything. My family and friends, already familiar with his reputation, rushed to block him. With everyone's help, he was finally subdued. I quickly called the police, and as the emotions of betrayal and heartbreak resurfaced, I couldn't hold back my anger. I stepped forward and slapped him hard. Caspian's head turned from the force, and he stared at me in shock. Tears glimmered in his eyes as he said with a hint of hurt in his voice, "You hit me." I looked at him coldly and said, "Yes, I did." "You deserved it, you lunatic." Hearing this, he seemed flustered, lowering his head as if trying to hide his tears. The police arrived shortly after, and when questioned, Caspian answered truthfully, his vitality seemingly drained. Without resistance, he followed the officers without looking back. I sighed in relief, thinking that this time he would finally be out of my life for good. Once Caspian was no longer a problem, Finn and I enjoyed a lovely vacation together. When the trip ended, I decided to find a new job and stop living such a relaxed lifestyle. After several interviews, I landed a position at a reputable company and began working a regular 9-to-5 schedule. However, my peace was soon disrupted. One day, my desk was suddenly filled with gifts, flowers, designer handbags, and expensive jewelry. Suspicious, I texted Finn to ask if he had sent them, but he denied it. In that moment, I realized who was behind it. After work, I packed all the gifts into a large trash bag, intending to throw them away. As I reached the building's exit, I was confronted by Caspian's unwelcome presence. He was dressed impeccably in formal attire, his hair neatly styled, showcasing his sharp features. He approached me with a smile as though nothing had happened between us. In a gentle tone, he said, "Darling, were you tired from work today? I reserved a private room at a restaurant. Let's go eat." Confused, I stared at him and asked, "Caspian, have you lost your mind?" His expression turned sad. "Why would you say that? What did I do wrong?" Too annoyed to argue, I asked bluntly, "What do you want? Why are you bothering me instead of being with your first love?" Caspian blinked, looking pitiful. "What first love? I've only ever been with you." I sighed in frustration and replied, "Are you seriously pretending again?" With an earnest expression, he said, "You're my first love, Serafina. There is no one else." His words and demeanor left me stunned. It became clear that he truly believed what he was saying. Realizing something was off, I decided not to press further. His behavior was strange, and I wanted nothing more than to end this interaction. Handing him the bag of gifts, I said casually, "I have something to do. I'm leaving." As I turned to go, Caspian grabbed my hand tightly. "Don't leave," he pleaded. I glared at him. "Let go," I demanded. His lips pressed together stubbornly, refusing to release me. Suddenly, his phone began ringing incessantly, but he ignored it. From a distance, I heard voices calling out, "Son, son!" Turning, I saw an older couple approaching. They bore a resemblance to Caspian. The woman grabbed his arm and said gently, "Son, it seems you forgot to take your medicine again. Come home with us." "I'm not going," Caspian protested firmly. The man beside her frowned and said sternly, "You're not well. Come back with us." As they tried to pull him away, I quickly withdrew my hand and turned to leave. Behind me, Caspian's voice called out desperately, "Serafina, Don't go! Please, I'm begging you. As I glanced back, I saw his mother's worried face. She approached me, her voice pleading. You're Serafina, aren't you? Ever since he returned from your house, he's been like this. Can you help him? I'm begging you. I hesitated briefly before refusing. He needs treatment at a hospital. I'm not a doctor. In desperation, Caspian's mother offered, You can have anything, money, a house, a car. Whatever you want, it's yours. Just help him. But I stood firm. I'm sorry, but Caspian is your responsibility. Without another word, I left, leaving them behind. I shook my head, still refusing to agree. Caspian's mother stared at me for a moment, and then tears suddenly began streaming down her face as she cried out in desperation, Please, I'm begging you, save him. As she finished speaking, she bent her knees, appearing as if she was about to kneel. The resemblance between mother and son was striking. Quickly, I reached out to support her, stopping her from kneeling, but she clung to me tightly, refusing to let go. In the distance, Caspian's father remained silent but kept his eyes fixed on me, his expression making it clear he hoped I would give in. Just when I felt trapped and unsure of how to free myself from this situation, Finn arrived. Without hesitation, he pulled me away from them, positioning himself protectively in front of me. In a composed and steady voice, he said, Uncle, Aunt, Serafina has moved on and is with someone new now. Please stop interfering in her life. Isn't it better to leave such matters to professionals? His words brought a sudden hush. Caspian, however, suddenly surged forward in fury and shouted, Who gave you the right to speak for Serafina? Finn responded with a touch of sarcasm. If I don't, do you think you should? Caspian's face turned white with rage as he swung his fist at Finn. Finn swiftly dodged, grabbed Caspian's arms, and pinned him firmly to the ground. The whole exchange happened so fast that by the time everyone processed it, the situation was already under control. Still holding Caspian down, Finn addressed his parents in a measured tone. Uncle, Aunt, Caspian's condition is dangerous. He could hurt someone at any moment. If you don't take proper care of him, I'll have no choice but to contact the authorities. This time, he could end up being forcibly committed to a mental health facility. I'm sure you wouldn't want that to happen. Caspian's mother quickly reassured Finn, No, please don't worry. We'll make sure he doesn't bother you anymore. At this, Caspian's father sighed heavily and made a phone call. Shortly after, a sleek black car pulled up by the roadside. Several bodyguards stepped out and efficiently restrained Caspian before carrying him into the vehicle. As they prepared to leave, Caspian cried out, struggling against their grip. Mom, I don't want to go. I need Serafina. I want her. His father, clearly fed up, strode over and slapped him hard. Be quiet, he barked. Turning back to Finn and me, he solemnly promised, We'll assign bodyguards to watch over him around the clock and take him overseas for treatment. He won't get another chance to disturb you. Finn nodded and replied, I hope you'll keep your word. Without another word, Caspian's parents got into the car and left. The sudden silence that followed felt like a weight lifting. I let out a deep breath, turning to Finn with a smile. Hey, it's a good thing you showed up when you did. Otherwise, I don't know how much longer I could have dealt with that family. Finn's gaze was warm, his eyes full of tenderness as he asked, So, how are you going to thank me? Taking his hand, I grinned and said, How about we go on a date? Finn held my hand tightly and agreed softly, Let's do it. From that moment on, Caspian never appeared to bother us again. Finn and I eventually picked an auspicious day to get our marriage certificate. Together, we left behind the pain and chaos of the past, looking forward to a peaceful, happy future as we started a new chapter of our lives.